Welcome to this presentation. This is a presentation on governance, companies governance. We're going to be bordering much on IT governance. My name is Boyle Christopher. I'm going to anchoring this presentation, and it's going to be in a series from part 1 to part 5. Please, I want you to pay attention and also ensure that you go through the 5 parts or the series. So let's go to the presentation proper. Nowadays, there is a shift in the meaning of the word asset. Talking about intangible assets now, such as information, knowledge, expertise, reputation, trust, as well as customer. It's a very important part for companies' sustainable competitive advantage. And many of these assets, as mentioned earlier or above in this presentation, rely on IT. You know what happened recently in Nigeria? This money scarcity that just happened. You can imagine that the IT infrastructure was overstressed and could not withstand the pressure. Hence, you notice people were not able to access their money even when they are trying to do some transfer. So this issue can only be settled with an update or a review of IT governance vis-a-vis corporate governance. IT is not just seen as a business enabler. Service delivery in the corporate world, especially in financial world, is entirely dependent on IT. As such, system reliability and information integrity is required. Like stated earlier, banking transaction cannot be executed without a good IT infrastructure. Let's look at the table of content for this presentation. Excuse me. The table of content is for all the series. So it starts with what is corporate governance, what is IT governance, what's the relationship between IT governance and GRC, why do organizations implement IT governance infrastructures, what kind of organization uses IT governance. How do you implement an IT governance program? How do I choose which framework to use? How do you ensure a smooth implementation and positive results? All of these questions shall be answered as we continue in this presentation. So let's look at corporate governance. What is corporate governance? Corporate governance, which is the same thing as enterprise governance, provides the guideline as to how a company can be directed or controlled such that it can fulfill its goals and objectives in such a manner that will add value to the company and also brings benefit to all stakeholders in the long run. It's a way that a corporation is governed. And we talk about bringing benefit to stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Stakeholders in this case include everyone ranging from the board of directors, the management, stakeholders, customers, employees, and the general society. How does it create value to all and sundry? So, under corporate governance, you have IT governance. Essentially, IT governance provides a structure for aligning IT strategy with business strategy. It's a formal structure. IT governance is a formal structure for aligning business strategy to that of IT strategy in order to give value to investment on IT. An IT governance framework answers some key questions, such as how the IT department is functioning overall, what key matrices or matrix management are needed, and what return is IT giving back to the business from the investment it is making. The primary goal of IT governance, the primary goals of IT governance are to ensure that the investment in IT generates business value and to mitigate the risks that are associated with IT. This can be done. Mitigating the risk associated with IT can be done by implementing an organizational structure with well-defined roles for the responsibility of information, business tasks or processes, applications, and usage of infrastructure. Therefore, By following a formal framework, organizations can produce measurable results towards achieving their strategies and goals. In the big picture, IT governance is an integral part of overall enterprise governance. Because of the criticality of the IT governance, because of the huge investments that are involved, IT governance should be the responsibility of the board of directors and executive management, and should be integrated properly with the enterprise governance. Talking about the leadership, in the leadership at that top level there, the members should be involved all through the organizational structures. People must be made to be responsible, given some responsibilities to ensure, to enforce, to monitor, and the processes. The IT governance should direct the use of IT in the processes to ensure that the organization IT sustains and extends the organizational strategy and objective in order to sustain the current business and growing the business to bring value for shareholders or stakeholders, and certainly stakeholders' expectations are that the business grows, which can be achieved with adequate governance of enterprise IT. The critical success of the structures and processes in terms of implementation has to do with effective communication among all parties. They need to collaborate. It needs to be sold to the users, stakeholders, and they must speak a common language and share the commitment to ensure that it works and succeeds in addressing the issues or the business cases. Let us look at IT governance framework. It has 5 boxes, as in the diagram before you. Start with provide direction, pointing to IT activities, pointing to measure performance, up to compare and set objective, which also point back to provide direction. IT governance framework provide direction for IT investments and usage. We talk about investment and usage, talk about IT activities in order to improve ways of doing business. The process would be automated to create effective business platform, making users have good experience in the usage of IT, as in this employee, the stakeholders. Consequently, it makes business execution efficient and cost effective. That is, what would have taken 1,000 persons for 2 months to execute or achieve will be achieved in no minutes by automation, thereby reducing costs and time of doing business, which means cost is reduced and time is gained. And also, human errors will be drastically reduced. IT governance is aware or should be aware of the inherent risks and induced risk in relation to the business. Hence, it should also show direction on how to mitigate these risks accordingly. A way of mitigating risk, you can implement disaster recovery plans and business continuity plan as a way of checkmating IT infrastructure failure or unavailability. All of the directions from IT governance should also include provisions for compliance. Could be regulatory compliance or ICT usage compliance. And also on regular basis, the performance of IT outcome should be measured and compared with the expected values to the set business objectives. Question like, is IT aligned with the business? Is IT enabling the business and maximizing profit as expected? Is IT resources used responsibly? Are IT-related risks properly managed? When you compare with the outcome from the performance measured, then there may be a need for a review of the IT governance or an update to capture or address areas that are not properly addressed, also address new changes or development, as well as new investments. Peterson Model 2003 on structures, process, and relationship mechanisms. You see the process and the structure mechanism pointing to IT governance framework. And on the other hand, process and structural mechanisms are also addressed at relationship mechanisms, talking about responsibilities, assignment of responsibilities, duties, job descriptions, and also should be addressed at the IT governance framework. And from IT governance, there are expected IT governance outputs, talking about value and also risk management. The structural mechanisms, which has to do with the roles, the duties, the positions, the responsibilities, and the process, which is the way, or which are the ways of carrying out tasks or doing the business, need to be governed by applying relevant frameworks. The relationship mechanism are represented in horizontal and vertical lines of reporting, which should also be governed. The expected IT governance outputs or outcomes, as mentioned earlier, shall be value delivery and risk management. Therefore, let us consider IT governance versus IT management. If you look at the screen, you will see a graph. From the y-axis, you will see business orientation. On the x-axis, you see time orientation. Now, you also have from the x-axis the internal and the external, while on the x-axis you have present and future. Now, looking at the realm of the IT management, the realm and the scope of IT management is internal and present. IT management is focused on the internal effectivity supply of IT services and products. It also looks at IT operations, how it is being managed. Whereas IT governance looks at the internal and the external. Also looks at the present and the future. So it extends from internal to external and from present to the future. It concentrates on performing and transforming IT to meet present and future demands of business. Yes, IT governance is organizational specifics. How you want to implement yours is local to your own organization. Therefore, IT governance can be taken holistically and also can be focused on IT. It depends on the scope. When the CISO is reporting to the CIO, then it could be said that the GRC is IT focus. On the other hand, if the CISO is reporting outside of IT, then the coverage is beyond IT, extending to the enterprise risks. Otherwise, IT governance and GRC are basically the same thing. So with this, we have come to the end of this part. I hope you enjoyed this part. Please look out for the part 2 and continue from part 2 where this one ends. Thank you. I want to also ask that you subscribe to this channel as a way of encouragement for me to continue to do or provide this content. Thank you very much.